Yeah, so thanks again for joining us this evening and being up for having this little chat. Let's just introduce ourselves so we all know where we're coming from. Nikki, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. I'm Nikki. I am from St Mary's Church in Putney. I have been Youth and Family Minister there since September last year. And so not just getting into the swing of things, and had lots of ideas of where we were going before lockdown hit. So had to change tack very, very fast. So yes, I learned a lot. I'm a mum of two children, a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. And most of my time I spend teaching Pilates, but I am at the church supposedly 10 hours a week, but a lot more hours than that in reality.
Amazing.
That's me.
Fab. Ramon, did you want to go next?
Yeah. So my name is Ramon. I am the Youth and Children's Coordinator at Annunciation Marble Arch. And I recently started as well. Actually, I was appointed last September, but I started this past January. And so I've spent most of my time working with youth and children in lockdown and actually in person, which has been interesting. And sort of exciting at the same time, because I was able to be sort of creative and innovative. And in my spare time, I'm also a musician and a liturgist. I don't have any kids, but I do have a dog. It's right here, Cuthbert, keeping me warm.
Nice. Luke, go for it.
I'm Luke. I work for Springfield Church in Wallington as the Children's and Families Minister. I've been there for a year and a half now, I think. Maybe nearly 2 years, January. So a little bit. And I have a little daughter who's 3 years old. And we're currently on our second stage of the adoption process. And we'll be getting another one. All going to plan before the end of the year. You never know. So
that's so exciting. Amazing. And I'm Katie. I work for the Diocese of London. I support children's ministry across the diocese, and I also coordinate our children and youth work apprenticeship scheme. It's a couple of different hats. But yeah, today we are gathered to talk about children's ministry. What has children's ministry in lockdown look like for you guys, and what do we think are some of the learnings and things that we can take into our new normal, and things that we will leave in lockdown. So I'd love to kick us off by each of you just sharing what have been some of your highlights of doing kids ministry over the last few months. What have you seen that has really just gone above and beyond what you imagined? Luke, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah. There's been some interesting conversations. With kids work, for me personally, I found it really interesting that the older age range, so your top end primary, have been quite comfortable engaging on Zoom and things like that, whereas the younger lot have no idea about that and it just doesn't work. But we've had some really interesting opportunities to sort of develop our Sunday work. So on a Sunday morning, we do a semi-live service, but we pre-record a kids slot at the end of the service, which is about 10 minutes long, has a craft, a talk and a sort of challenge in it. And I've been getting some really great photos, great feedbacks from our families, and actually from people who aren't our kids who are age, doing the crafts and sending me pictures and just really getting into it. And it's just been really encouraging to see that actually, even though we can't meet, doing stuff online which works for the adults, actually if you do it at the right level, can engage the youngsters and actually engage some adults too. And then we've been having Zoom chats after the service, so they can then sort of throw what they've learned and experienced in, which has been encouraging and quite fun to do. Mm. And scavenger hunts, if you're still doing lockdown Zooms, scavenger hunts are the best thing ever, because you literally just turn to them and say, find me this, and they just run off camera. Some of them carry the camera with them, which becomes kind of sickening, but it just disappears and then they reappear and it's like, this is good.
Amazing. That's so fun. Ramon, what does it look like in action?
Yeah, so I guess the highlight would have been starting a youth and children's website for Annunciation. And so at the start of lockdown, I knew that we had to get online somehow. And one of my goals was to create some sort of online platform for youth and children. And lockdown forced me to get it done very quickly. And so I created a page that was specifically for our young people to engage with. And at first it was just sort of a page where I was writing blog posts, which kind of helped me to kind of go back into my memory of being a kid and talk about Easter and Holy Week from that perspective. And then I realized that there was a gap between sort of doing things for the kids and then not doing things that included their families as well, because we were all at home. And I was just like, well, if you're at home, you might as well engage with your family too while doing this. And because during this time, our church has been in a period of vacancy, so we haven't had a priest, and so we haven't had the privilege of having live stream services from our building. And so that shifted to me recording short 20-minute services every weekend that were geared toward kids and their families. So it just included music, prayers, a reflection, and that came off really well with a lot of people because it kind of showed that our church was doing something online that could engage with not only the young people, but kind of bring their families together as well.
Amazing. So fun. Nikki, what does it look like for you guys?
It's interesting, Luke, what you said about the fact that you felt that it engaged the older sort of end of primary school, because we had the opposite. I mean, I'm sure we're going to speak about our challenges in a moment, so I'll bring those up then. But I suppose highlights for me has been the fact is that our church model has been for quite some time a model where parents come in, they take the children directly to Sunday school, and then the children basically come in for a blessing. And what we rarely sat down, and then basically a final hymn, and that's the end of the service. So the amount of time that the children were actually in the church was very, very little. And it was one of the biggest things that I really noticed when I arrived with my family. So we rarely sat down and looked at what we wanted to do. And the main highlight, which I found, is that we created a new service. We were doing our online, our normal service at a Eucharist, online Eucharist at 10:30, and we created a new service, which is at 9:15, which was meant for families. And our families have never consistently worshipped together, ever, for this long. So definitely our highlight was seeing people and families engage with their faith at home to create conversation amongst families and different generations, which we never really saw beforehand. And to see how, although our numbers were down, we've got quite a big Sunday school. We've got two very good church schools attached to our schools, so there are quite a number of kids. And although our numbers were down, what was definitely true was it was consistent. So the same family who used to start at the beginning of lockdown were with us right at the end. And so for the first time, there wasn't only just the highlights of everything, they got the whole story. And I think that was the biggest change. And to actually, for the first time, hear the children's voices, speak with their parents, give them time to go away, reflect, and come back as a family, and to talk about their family's experience was wonderful. And that's definitely what we're hanging on to now.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's such an encouraging story. Love it. So Nick, you sort of touched on there, but be interesting just to hear your challenges. I find it fascinating that you've each sort of come at this in different ways, and what you're providing for your communities is slightly different, which is not surprising. Every community is different, but I imagine some of your challenges might be more similar. Don't know. Ramon, do you want to kick us off, and what have you found your challenges to be?
I think my challenges, there's been many challenges, but I think the biggest one has been really sort of keeping children and families engaged. And I think the risk with all of the online stuff is that you can see who is engaging, and you can see the analytics and the stats, and we get tied up in all of the numbers of things. And so you kind of see the numbers dwindle as lockdown kind of got longer and longer and longer. And so it was really tough to really kind of, I guess, keep on being creative and produce a lot of new content and new and exciting things that were very interesting. But also just trying to keep yourself motivated and kind of getting it done, because when the numbers go down, you kind of feel that lack of motivation, or you feel like you're not doing a good job. And as we move out of lockdown, thinking about sort of how those challenges will affect how ministry is done from now on, is just all of those questions coming up while doing the work itself. But I think in our parish, because we have a church school as well, that's really big, and a lot of our young people come to our Sunday school because of that. It was hard to kind of really gauge who everyone was, because in person you can see these people, but when you're online you can't tell and really connect and make those relationships that are so important to our work. And so it just sometimes the work just felt a little static sometimes, and not really that dynamic, and just kind of going through the task of getting it done. I found very, very, very hard.
Yeah. Nikki, what about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree with some of that. Is that what I found was that coming up with the different ideas and coming up with the different content every week, in addition to homeschooling children and trying to do everything else at the same time, was incredibly tiring. And there were points where I was like, I can't actually do this anymore. I need a break. And it was just like, well, how long is this going to last? And it just like kept on going and kept on going. And just that feeling of keeping connected as to why we were doing this. And to sort of bring myself back to that every single time, going, this is what we're doing. This is amazing, and to try and keep myself going. And we did have a good team. My colleagues, so we've got 2 churches in the parish, and we changed all our services to be parish services. And my colleague was furloughed, so a lot of it fell on to me. And also from a technical point of view, it's just getting everything online technically and getting things to work smoothly, and for people to be able to engage in as a relaxed manner, so that it didn't feel chaotic or anything. But I do agree, there was a relationship issue, and that is why I found it harder with the older children, because with the younger children, you can keep the energy going. And I found that really connecting with children who were going through really big things in their lives, sort of missing year 6, that kind of stuff, transitioning into secondary school. We have only, sort of backtrack, our youth group at St Mary's has been quite inconsistent. And we had 2 amazing parish assistants who got it going, but they were only there for a short time, and then they left. And then we didn't have anybody for a while. And then we've got an amazing curate who's come in, and he got things started just about 2 or 3 months before lockdown. And we found it hard to continue that, because we didn't find that our relationships were rooted enough beforehand to be able to have really important conversations on a relatively impersonal platform as online. So I think that's why perhaps we felt that it was easier to engage with the younger ones, partly because I know them more, and but for me that was hard, was to see a youth group that was actually really going in the right direction just kind of fizzle away, and that was hard to see that, and then also to try and keep up with all of the different stuff. To keep everyone motivated, including myself.
That's something. Luke, what have you found?
I guess so. With us, we're doing the Zoom, and we had a system very quickly set up where we were calling quite a lot of our members, and I got given quite a few of the families with the older kids, the top end sort of primary school kids. So I was able to have conversations with them and see what was working, what they were using, what was engaging them, and they were sending me photos and stuff. So that was quite useful. But for us, the younger kids, we tried to put them on Zoom and get 5 or 6 3-year-olds on Zoom, and they just all chat to each other all at the same time. And we ended up with the parents just saying, I really can't do this because it's just noise, just shouting noise. You know, my daughter's running over going, I've found this in my garden. There's another kid who's running off with his mum's phone to show you the plant outside. And it was utter chaos. There was nothing else to it. It was just pure chaos. And we really missed just meeting with them and actually being one-on-one. And I don't know about you, Nikki, but I noticed with my daughter, she really missed being with other kids. And she's an only child at the moment, and so she was really struggling. And the first few months, to be fair, was very different. She'd only just started preschool as well, which is just even worse. It's like, here's preschool, and no. So that was that. But I think that's what we really struggled with, and it was looking at how we can engage it. And then hilariously, they sort of allowed us out, and so for the last 4 weeks, we've been doing meetings in the park and classing them as an event. And so we could have 15 people in, which was great. But then they've gone and shut that down again now, so I can't do that again. And so I've lost, in terms of who regularly turn up, I probably lost half my group, don't regularly turn up. But I know they are engaging, they're not as vocal online. But they're there and they want to get engaged when we're allowed to be actually together. That's what the deal is. And that's where the issue is. We don't have a building. You guys sound like you're blessed with a building. We don't. We hire a school, so we can't go back there currently. And we use community spaces, and likewise, we can't go there at the moment. So we're in a different boat altogether. We're looking at being online for at least until January, if not further into next year. And so then working out how we do things there, which engage, which build up, which connect. We've recently started looking and reviewing what we've been doing and, what we can carry on, what should just sort of fall at the wayside. But yeah, that's quite difficult. I just miss being with people. I quite like it, messing around, and then, no one's there now.
Yeah. And I think that's like such a common experience that we hear again and again, is the missing connection. Like that is probably one of the biggest challenges, that almost common challenges, is just, you can sort of have a degree of connection, but it's obviously just not the same as meeting in person. And that's so often what one of the joys of church is, just having a chat with someone, or for the kids just to run around, be able and, enjoy that space with their friends, which is really sadly missed right now. So as we move forward into whatever this new season will look like of this world, what do you think, from your learning through lockdown, what are you going to sort of be taking forward with you and think, that's really great, let's keep doing that? Nikki, do you want to start us off?
Well, we have gone back. So what we've done is we've kept that new 9:15 service. We did need to talk to the people. So what we've done is we set up as a service of the word, and what we've done is we're going to be using godly play as a very strong element, because we found that the godly play actually translated really well online, and we got people communicating with us quite nicely through that. So the thing that really, as I said, came out was the connection with the family and the worshipping as a family unit, and really getting them to realize that there was a disconnect with the children, realizing that actually what they learned in Sunday school had actually something to do with their daily lives. And so really, really creating that connection within a family, but also having a look at all the information that has come out during the lockdown, like the stuff that Oxford Diocese released in their report, and just looking at sort of the 15, 16-year-olds who have this massive disconnect with church, and trying to figure out what are we doing and how are we getting there. So taking that family connection and saying we had children worshipping for the first time as part of our normal service. So we've created a service where you have a bit of reflecting a connection between some kind of liturgy, because we are that kind of church, and then we use godly play. And what we've done is we've put dots on the floor around, and the children come forward and they sit in the dots and they listen to the story. We're also streaming home, and we're very lucky. We've got a couple of people who are in the film and sound industry, so they've set the church up in a way which we've never had. I mean, we've never had any tech in our church at all. So that the live streaming goes, that we can see the story, the people at home, and then we break out into wandering groups, and they're in their family units, socially distancing in the main area of the church within a family unit. They never really come out of their family bubble. We don't have pews, we've got chairs, so it's easy to do it. And then online, we have somebody facilitating an online breakout room so that we're able to wander and do response online. And then we all come together and we pray together. And then we have notices and a blessing. And we get the families to bless each other, which is something we've never done before either. And to actually have the children bless the adults, and to hear the stuff that they say. Quite profound. So that, I mean, we're building on it, and I think Luke, you said like the chaos. Initially we were worried about the chaos, but and we kind of just let it go and let it happen. But it's kind of come back, and it's quite quiet in church. I was quite surprised. Our numbers, of course, are down because of the socially distancing factor. So it's not like an all-age service used to be, like absolute chaos. And it's going beautifully. And I don't think we could have made that change. I don't think I could have convinced the parents that it wasn't the best idea to drop their parents and their children off at Sunday school if this hadn't happened. And it's amazing that initially, because we're training our Sunday school teachers to be the wanderers, we call them wandering angels, with the families, and to say that this is your time as a family to be together. We're wandering together as a family, as a community. And also to hear adults talk to each other now, and to them to wander together. And so from that point of view, it's been amazing. It really has. And we don't know how long, where it's going to go, and we're learning as we go along. And it's not to say that we won't ever do Sunday school again, but I don't think we'll go back to that Sunday school only model. Having the children in the church with their families has just been amazing. So yes, I think that's kind of where we're going. And just to look at the fact that we really looked at ourselves and he said, okay, well what are we doing? Are we wanting to be a church which is primarily focused on foundation and sort of fundamentals of Christian learning, therefore the Sunday school model, or are we a worshipping church? And to somehow find the difference and the middle ground, saying we're worshipping and we're learning, and somehow to mix it together. Whereas we were very focused on the one side, at least from a children's ministry point of view.
Amazing. I really like that language, bringing those two together. That's really exciting. Ramond, what are your take-homes or your things you're going to look to carry on?
Well, thank you for all of that, Nikki. I studied liturgy worship, so you're speaking my language there, so I appreciate sort of that context you kind of brought in. I think for us, it's been tough because of our vacancy period, so a lot of things can't really change, and we actually just opened our building this past Sunday for worship for the first time. But I think moving forward, it would be really nice to see our children in church more, because we don't have them in church for a very long time. They leave right after the greeting, and they come back in after communion. And I think they miss a big gap in sort of corporate worship when they're not in church. And so really during my time in lockdown, doing those short services was sort of my way of, one, showing them that they can engage with worship and liturgy, because I think sometimes the notion is that kids can engage with worship, but also to bring in some sort of repetition and normal. I think that during this time, a lot of churches have tried to change things a lot and adapt, and moving back, change can be good, but also you don't want church to feel very disorienting for people, especially because life has just been disorienting. And so really trying to create that space of repetition every week with the services, with the same structure, with the same prayers, to give them the sense that this thing remains the same, even though that life around me might be changing. And so I hope moving forward that would become just a staple of how we do children's ministry in our work at Annunciation, especially as a high Anglo-Catholic sort of church. It would be nice to bring in more of that and to bring our children and families together, because in our work, again, our program is really big. It's about 200 kids on a Sunday. And so we can't foresee when we will be back together again, because we don't have the capacity to hold 200 kids safely in the space we have. And I think really getting kids to worship together with their families is so important. And that's one of the things I've been trying to do over lockdown as well, by doing all of those family activities, so that they can get a sense that worshiping together as a family is an important thing. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Luke, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we're quite interesting. We're quite different church style. We are fresh expression, and we actually are using lockdown as a way of getting rid of stuff and switching stuff up quite a bit. Because when we were planted as a church 27 plus years ago, and we're radical, we're one of the first churches to be in a school as their main thing and this kind of stuff. And what's been on the heart of the staff team is actually we're not radical anymore. We're quite normal. And so we want to go back into that radical side, which is quite fun. But we've been looking with the children's work. Something that's really been exciting for me during lockdown is with Sunday readings. Normally it's the person just before the preach would do a reading, read the Bible, and then the preach. And we wanted to get people to see those who you're not seeing regularly with lockdown, because, you know, you watch it on YouTube or you stream it, however you watch it, and you don't see everyone. So we quite quickly on, I think within the second Sunday, we passed off the reading to different family members. And we had some families who were doing Lego versions. We had readings with a full-on movie trailer. And it was just really powerful to see families of all ages, people of all different styles, to bring their version for the reading. And it fully changed it up. And that's something that the whole church have really got on board with. And it's now become something of we really want to do the reading now. We want to bring our style to it. And that's something I'd love to carry on when we are back together, is to have that thing of, it's not, that's the adult side of things, and the families can't do it and the kids can't do it. And again, with the whole integrating the families and worship, we're blessed that once a month we have a family service where everyone's all in. There's a craft. Well, there's normally 3 crafts going off during the service, which you can get involved in, and questions for the adults who are a bit more, want to think rather than go and colour in something. And that's become something that we've tried to integrate into the Sunday online stuff. And I've been sending out things in the week, which before, again, I wasn't doing. They'd come in, they'd do Sunday service. I'd send them home with a craft if it was a good week, sort of thing. But actually, we've been emailing them every week, and they get, so the first, how long have we been in lockdown? The first few months,
Yeah.
I managed to do, I was really chuffed with myself, I managed to do 33 stories, kept it a good godly number, and we went the whole way through the Bible in 33 stories, and they were activity stories. So they were like, as an example, Jericho, you had to build a wall while your parent was reading you the story, and it was that kind of thing. And I was doing that every week and sending that out every week, and we're now sending out scavenger hunts because you're allowed outside and we can't meet you. And it's doing that kind of thing of making Sunday lead into the week and be something that happens during the week as well. It's not, this is what we talk about on Sunday, then you do normal stuff in the week, and then next Sunday this is what we talk about. I'm trying to make it come much more, fluid in that. And that's been quite exciting, and the different ways we've been doing that and looking at that. It's been fun, and I'm blessed with a great team. So the first couple of months, I definitely, my wife will tell you, I definitely went hard in terms of the time I was putting in, trying to make sure everything was fitting. And my wife was like, you just need to take some time to chill. And thankfully, John, our minister, was like, no, let's pull it back a bit. Everyone needs to take holidays. Everyone needs to rest a bit, because we were just trying to get everything to how it was on a Sunday, but online, and trying to make sure that everyone in our congregation, we're not a massive church, to make sure everyone in our congregation was doing okay. That was a realization of actually we can pull back, and I had a great team, and I'm able to just, throw it to them, say, you three, this week, this is the theme, come up with my 3 points, and then they will send me a video, and I just stick it together and send it off, and it goes online, and it's a lot easier than having to do a whole 25-minute thing on your own every week, with a 3-year-old shouting in the background, which is fun.
That's so cool. That's so
cool. Sorry, can I just add something? What I think which was quite interesting was the fact that we were doing it from our homes, and that the other families saw that we were normal people. Yeah. And I think that was quite important, actually, is that I every now and again had my 3-year-old climb over me, or my 6-year-old scream at me from the other room, or something went wrong, and it was quite refreshing, and initially I took huge offense to it, and somebody texted me and said to me, it's like when the sound system doesn't work in church, it's the same thing, it's just different. So we love it, and just, and let go. But one of the main things as well that I forgot to mention was that is giving our families the language, and our parents, to be able to talk about faith with their children, and because that's what we found was really lacking. And just what you guys were saying about the Monday to Saturday stuff is what's going on in the home, and it's all very well saying to parents, ask open-ended questions, like, what do you mean, and the feedback that we've got from a lot of the parents is, we as a family, and I do mean my wife and myself, have learned a huge amount in this time. It's because they're not afraid to ask, and the children aren't afraid to ask, and it's just giving them that language to talk to each other, and not be afraid that actually your child might know more than you do, kind of thing, which I think a lot of it is the case in our church. Yeah.
And I do hope that doesn't change. I think doing the stuff in our homes at first, it really did rekindle sort of that domestic church life. And I think moving forward, I think a lot of churches should really rekindle that in a lot of people, and teaching people how to be church at home with their families, and finding your Bibles and pulling them out and talking about faith, and having faith conversations over dinner, and not being afraid to pray together before meals and before bed, and doing all of those things that were so important to at least my parents growing up. And how do you kind of pass that on to our young people now? I think that's very important.
Yeah, I think that's a theme that we're hearing again and again, is like, actually this has given us an opportunity to connect with parents and encourage and resource parents to go, look, you can disciple your children. Yes, we're here on a Sunday to support that and to help your children see that and do that in community, but you can do that in the home through the week as well. And I think that's been something that has been amazing to see.
And in fact, that it's the most important part, actually.
Exactly.
This is where the foundation is. And I think it's doing that in a way not to add another layer onto parenting guilt. That, we're not doing this, we're failing in every other area of our life, and we're failing at this too. It's not about that. It's just like, we're on this together. We're journeying together. And I think that was one thing about being in COVID, is that we really were all in this together. And that we could say, here we are, and we're all experiencing the same thing, maybe in different ways, but it was really something that was common to everyone. And that was quite interesting. It was kind of leveling the ground.
Yeah. And it's the same as what you're saying, like, obviously with either filming it live or doing live Zooms, they saw the madness of our families. And there was no way, like at the start, I was retaking my videos like 4 or 5 times to get that shot. And then I was like, this is taking too long. And my daughter was still sat in there shouting, the TV stopped working, Daddy. And it's like, I can't shut that out, you know. You do whatever you can to keep them quiet. Seriously, it worked well. But they saw that, and it wasn't, we took it, like I said, we took it offence, but it wasn't to them. It was more homely. John, the vicar, he filmed everything live from his lounge, and he's got Ethan's just turned 2. I think he's just turned 2 or 1.5. Anyway, a little one who we've seen go from somebody who was just falling asleep whenever his dad started leading worship to now he can't even be on the camera because he started pulling all the wires out of the screen and everything. And we saw it through the screen. But it was real, and it became part of the conversations during the service between people online and stuff of, oh, what's Ethan going to do next and that. And it was quite real and just refreshing. Whereas on a Sunday, you sort of try to keep them, like you both were saying, you try and keep your kids out of the way because you want to be church, and they're just out of the way. But now it's just like, well, they're kids, in it. We're a family, and families is all ages. Family is all different styles and different attitudes.
I'd love to expand on this a bit more, like ties into the question of like what are the long-term impacts of COVID on children's ministry, and I think we're starting that conversation, but what are your thoughts on this sort of how the future might look? Jump in, anyone?
I'm hoping that it shows that actually, no matter who you are and what age you are, there's a contribution to be had, and you are as equal as a person who's wearing a collar, who's not wearing a collar, who has a degree, who doesn't have a degree, who's 60 years old and who's 5 years old, 2 years old, is that we are all worshipping, we're all together, and that we've all got something to learn from each other, because the amount of skills that we had to pull from people who never contributed in any way crawled out of the woodwork, and we were making phone calls and saying, could you help, and people were just helping in every possible way that they could. And although church has always been a community where people, I think if you're looking at communities that do muck in together, it is like that, but for us it's definitely been that leveling ground of being equals in leading worship and facilitating faith. I think.
That's awesome.
I think 3 things. I think 1, we will come up with a lot more stronger youth and children's leaders. I think this time has really just formed a lot of us in a different way, which is a very good thing. I also think it's made us a lot more intentional. At least in my work, I've been a lot more intentional in planning the videos that I'm doing and really thinking deep about what I want to say each week, because it's the one chance I have to talk to the kids. And so I think it has made us more intentional in either the things we produce or the way in which we were connecting with our young people. We've just put in a little extra, even in the chaos of our own lives. We still kind of persevered and went through and didn't go on holidays and just kind of worked because of the passion that we have for it. And then I think lastly that this time will hopefully help us all to kind of reimagine how we do youth and children's ministry moving forward. I don't know what that might look like. I would hope that we would move back into a state where we can gather together safely, because like the contact and relationship is so important. But I also hope that it makes us think deeper about the work that we've been doing and how important it is. Because when it's going well, it's just like, okay, this thing is going well and we can just repeat it each week and we're just doing it. But this period has really made us stop and think and reflect, rechange, reshape, and think about what we're actually doing. And so I hope that we start to really reimagine the way in which our ministry will be shaped after this. And because in some instances, at least from talking with friends, it seems like children and young people aren't the ones really coming back to church at this time as well. And there are like some kind of disparities in that. So really just thinking about how we intentionally, again, connect with them and bring them back, show that the church is here for them, will be very important.
Yeah, I think we're going to find, again, I do children's work, but chatting to my friends who do youth work, I think we're going to find that there's going to be a lot of kids with a higher level of need of support. And they're going to need a totally different level of support than what we're used to. But I think the family aspect and the fact that we are much more tighter as a unit and more, like you're saying, Raymond, in terms of being more focused on what we're doing and running for, that hopefully will encourage that connection and help the kids feel that there's somewhere they can be safe, they can be real. Long term, again, I'd love to get back together and be doing things, but I think that's going to be totally changed because it's going to have to be in slightly smaller numbers and slightly more protected organisation, if that makes sense. Like, you can't just have them running free and doing the kind of crazy games that we used to do and, like, you know, the madness. But actually, it's going to have to be a lot more sort of, we do this, you don't play tag as much and sort of stuff. But out of that, hopefully, the value of the relationship and the value of the friendship will be much stronger. And will just be a bigger encouragement because they've realised, especially, again, the little ones I've been chatting to, they've realised how much fun it is to have a friend around who you can chat to, who you can be honest with, and not being able to be with them, being stuck with your parents and stuck with your brothers and sisters has been long, for one of the better things. They're just sitting there like they were begging to go back to school. It was hilarious. The kids I was chatting to at the start of lockdown were like, yay, no school. But at the end of this, they're like, please just let me go back into that school building and just see my friends. And I think that's something we need to really sort of jump on and be like, look, you know, this kind of friendship is valuable. You've seen what it's like when you don't have your friends there. So when your friends are there, just really support them, really care about them, really love them. And we will help you teach, we'll help you do that in a better way and in a much more useful way, so that if we do go back into a lockdown, if we do go into that separation, there's still that connection, there's still that love, there's still that care. And some of them have been saying that, and they've been doing it through little conversations online and little friendship groups. But yeah, I think that's something we could really encourage more out of lockdown, and use the lockdown as a positive jump to really develop in our ministry.
I think it also has created a wider sense of empathy. You know, I think we've always known that we have an impact on other people, but now it's very real. You know, I look after you by being one way, and you look after me. I mean, the whole mask thing and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's very real in that way, but it does translate a lot more on an emotional level. And I think that, you know, we also need to remember that there have been families. I mean, we've been very lucky. You know, my boys have been fantastic. Their relationship has grown amazingly. Yes, they fight like cat and dog at times, but overall, I'd say it's been quite a positive time. My husband's home a lot more. We have lunches together. We have dinners together. There are a lot of people who it was absolutely awful. And I think it's just that being being there for people and being sort of real with people and saying, no, this is what was going on, and for us to be able to connect very really with people in a way that I just think that perhaps at church or in our communities or as a wider community, you know, there was the peace and like peace, hello, but there wasn't that kind of like, I've actually really missed you. And we had chats on, you know, after services. We'd like, right, everybody switch your cameras on, and occasionally we broke out into smaller groups and we got people to talk. And people were on for ages, absolute ages, and talking about really real things. And so hopefully that realness and that empathy carries on.
I think on the same lines as the honesty, like we've had to be much more honest. One thing I've realised is I can be quite honest with my daughter more than I realised I could. So she fully understands that we're on lockdown. She knows, she wears the masks because we wear masks, so she wanted to. So she walks around with a mask on, which is quite entertaining. But it's that idea of, for her, she gets it. Like, I sometimes think, oh, she's free, she doesn't understand it, but she does. And she's like, oh, I can't go into that person's house because we're on lockdown, Daddy, and they're not everybody's better. And I think, at least for me, with my younger group, I wouldn't dumb it down, but I wouldn't be as honest as what I can be. And it's this realization that actually with all ages, you can be really honest and in a positive way and encourage them and help them. And when being honest with the Bible, when being honest with what it means to be with God as well, don't just be like, oh, just go to bed and, say a prayer to God and pick up the phone like you do, and that's how you talk to God. You can just be real and be like, if you're having a bad day, tell God. And she'll come in and she'll like, I need to pray to God, Daddy, because I've had a bad dream. And she gets that. And before, I wouldn't have ever thought of doing that. So the honesty for all ages is something that I've definitely, clocked is worthwhile and valued.
That's amazing. I'm aware of time, and I want to ask you a question that I didn't put on my list, but I've just thought of as we've been talking. But what do you think, or what would you like to say to church leadership? Doesn't necessarily need to be directly to your church leadership, but to church leadership that you think people need to hear to help them value and prioritise children's ministry as we come out of this season. Like, a lot of what you've been saying is that there's a lot of sort of big culture shifts in the way that we're doing church from a lot of coming out of a lot of what you're saying. So how do we see that on a broader scale? What do you think that looks like to see this change and for it to be a fixed thing, not just like, oh, we're coming out of lockdown and we'll change these things, but actually then over time we revert back. But if you had an opportunity to sit down with a bishop or, somebody who had that sort of power, what would you say to them to help them understand and see how we could prioritise children and families in our churches? Take a minute.
I'd probably go, don't hide the kids and families away. Don't put them at the back. Don't put them in a different room, but use them as an encouragement for the rest of the church. And the joy when the younger church start worshipping and getting God can really impact the older generations. But if you hide it, if you're putting it in another room so they can't see it, then it's not going to impact. And actually, it's going to make them feel that they're not part of the church. The old attitude, which I've been in, sadly, in churches where they have it, where the kids should be seen and not heard sort of thing in church. You bring them in, then quickly shove them off into the thing. It can't continue if we want the church to carry on growing and we want the church to impact communities. And with lockdown, with the stuff that all of us have said in terms of getting the families engaged together, that is something that should be able to be seen on a Sunday as well and be encouraged rather than, shushed.
Yeah, I suppose for me, I totally agree with that, is that, we've heard so many for so long, the children are the future disciples. Like, no, they are the disciples. Like, we are all disciples. And so we can't be pretending we're preparing them for something. Like, well, what are we preparing them for? I don't understand. Surely our journey right from the start to the end is the preparation. It is the journey. It is all part of it. And the idea that that children can't bless adults, that we can't be a blessing, that it can't go the other way around, and that nothing can be learned from a child it's got to go. And the only way to make people more tolerant, and that's not a nice word to use, of children, of the different way of worshipping, is by it happening. The longer we keep it separate, the longer we call it different things, then it's going to be something different, but actually it's all part of the same thing. So it's, everything, all age service, what does that mean, right? But that truly that we are worshipping together and we should be doing it. And yes, there are times when, as an adult, you're looking for a bit of quiet time and you're looking for reflective time and you're looking for a bit of contemplative time. But children can be contemplative too. And so it's not to say that and the adults can't have that contemplative time, but don't think that we shouldn't be giving children a place to be contemplative, to be thoughtful, and to stop just making them do stuff all the time. We want them to colour in, we want them to create, we want them to show everybody. Like, let them sit with it, to model silence, to model worship, to model thoughtfulness, I think is kind of where I'd love to see that as a change.
I'd love, I agree with both Nikki and Luke. I really would like to see more children in church. And I think it's in part that I studied liturgy, so I really value worship, but to my own growing up and being in church, I never had any all-age worship, and it was just you sat in church and you sat with your family and you contemplated, and if you didn't understand, you looked like at a stained glass window and you looked at candles, and you might see light coming through the window and you might think of something bigger than yourself. And I think we've gotten used to just ushering our children out of church and then bringing them back in, and then ushering them out each week and bringing them back in. And then when they're finally adults, it's hard to get them to just be back in church, because what we've done is just constantly take them out of church. And so I would love to see more children and young people in church, in worship, and then also just for us to, in doing that, find the correct access and how we nurture that. That's it.
That's awesome.
For me, the all-age thing is the term alone is a downfall. I like the way that we call it family service, because actually a family is the 90-year-old gran who can't hear and the 2-year-old kid who can't sit still and is just running back and forth shouting. That's your family. And all age makes it feel like you're trying to, I'm going to hit the 11s at this section, I'm going to hit the 22-year-olds at this section. But actually, if we just say family service, then it's a service for everyone. And it's a service for all the different family elements and all the different people and the weird uncle to get involved, to enjoy, and to just meet with God in a different way. And I think for me, from my experiences of different churches and how they do all-age family services, I think having a variety of things available for them to do, and not making it so, for want of a better term, religious, that you do this at this time, this at this time, and this at this time, but just saying, we're here to worship together, we're here to listen to God, we're here to talk about God together, and there's things here that are going to help you, and at times we'll open those up and you can go and do them, and at times we'll all come back together and we'll just focus. That makes it much more family orientated and much more positive. But that's just my personal view on the all-age title.
Yeah, but I think also the whole thing here is, we always know that, especially in the Church of England, there's just this massive range, as there's so many ways to do things. There's so many different ways to skin a cat, and also just for us to learn from each other. And I think that where these kind of things are just so fantastic is that, the idea of having a children's page on my website, why didn't I ever think of that, kind of thing. It's like, so thanks, Roman, for that idea. But, and Luke, you've said stuff as well that we don't often sit around together. And actually, I think there's also one thing that's been amazing coming out of COVID is the accessibility of talking to other churches and us youth leaders and family leaders to actually talk to each other and to listen to other people's ideas. Because I actually think that before, people did cling a little bit to, this is what we do and this is our formula, whereas I think that there's been a lot more sharing and a lot more openness to hear, actually, I really like that. That's the element. How does that fit into what we do, and where can we go with that? So thank you as well from Katie, and also from people from Southwark and everybody who's done this stuff, because we all needed support right in the beginning as well, and to hear other people's ideas and inspiration has been great. And I think as well, Kelly has from Southwark has texted me and said, listen, there's somebody around near you who's looking to chat with somebody she's feeling a bit isolated. Are you okay to talk? And I'm like, yeah, but that never happened beforehand, which is great.
That's so encouraging. Yeah, I think that's definitely something that partly I think as well, like technology can enable that to happen more. Like actually for us to travel across London to meet with other people can be just too much, but actually just sit at our desk and talk with like we are now, like on a Zoom call is very doable, and it just takes an hour, and there's not hours of travel around it, and it enables the connection in that space much more easily.
Yeah, definitely.
My scavenger hunt was somebody's idea. I was like, I like that idea. And they then sent me an email with like 5 different ways of doing it. And I was like, sweet, sorted now.
Yeah, that was on the WhatsApp group, wasn't it?
Yeah. I've used that. I've tweaked it for my lot, but I've used that. So
great.
It's the rich, like we are one church. We may like practice and do things slightly differently, but we are one church, and actually we need to be family and support one another and encourage one another and share resources where that's possible.
We all think differently. Like the way I see church and the way the rest of you see church is going to be different, which means we're going to have some ideas that actually I would never have thought of. And then I can use it and it works amazingly. And it's the idea. But if we are all insular and like, no, this is how I do church, I can't do it another way, nobody's ever going to get any new ideas, and we're not going to develop our ministry, yet alone anyone else's ministry, in a way that's going to benefit the families.
Yeah, I think it just opened the one thing I've really got is that it's opened the scope for possibility. Like anything is possible. We're doing this, and actually if we can do this, and if we can have got things together in such a short space of time, it's endless, and it's been it's been tiring. There's no two ways about it. But anything can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a great place to end.